It's going to be terrorizing for people because once I get that energy going at that early morning treadmill, my brain just is like, boom, 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 boom. It turns me into the Terminator. Whereas if I just start with the show, which is what I normally do, I take my morning
have
slow.
Some energy
I read
later.
Yeah. Now it's like 8 o'clock. I'm on the treadmill.
Well, it's time for me to pull the trigger on the treadmill then.
I guess so. Yeah. I think the Peloton tread is like their best product. I'm so upset at the $4 that I'm now using the treadmill more. They got me.
Yeah.
When they upped the $4, they're like, now it's $44.
It's absurd.
You're spending. It's absurd. Peloton, what are you doing? Drop
now,
the price per month.
Instead of giving me that subscription or dropping the price in half, Nordstrom, now Costco, because I'm like the deal queen over here.
Yeah.
Costco has like the fancy Nordic Track treadmill.
Yeah.
For $1,000.
Wow.
It's like half the price. It's like 50%.
Did they charge a monthly subscription for like classes and content? Or
you can get that, but who cares? Like I'm just about,
You're just about,
I just like that running or that climbing a hill.
Yeah. I like this type of treadmill where it's a bed as opposed to a belt. Like there's belt ones versus, or do they call them slat? Belt. Anyway, it's got this like very interesting tread, and it really works well. I guess they call it a slat tread. I recommend it for everybody. It's much better. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to look into this Nordic Track and see if it's that kind, because maybe that's why it's so much cheaper.
I think the belt ones are cheaper.
But what's the difference?
There's something about it that's like softer on your knees. It just feels different. So I think it's like it's a feel kind of situation. Okay, everybody, welcome to our noties. We have a bunch of great news stories to cover today. Molly, just maybe give them a little preview.
What's up, everyone? Actually, we're super excited because we're going to kick it off today talking about drone deliveries. We had a lot of questions about the details of drone deliveries. And so like we do, we went straight to the source. The CEO of DroneUp is coming on any minute. And we're going to be like, how far can it go? And how fast will it be here? And how many things can it carry?
Yes.
So that's very exciting. Also, as I believe Jason put it, it's chaos in the finance world. It's just, there are like bank raids. And I mean, are we close to bank runs? Like it is all.
I had one of those. I think Luna
and Terra, arguably.
Yeah.
Venture capital investment is cooling off. You've got massive markdowns. Who would have thunk it? But Reddit doesn't seem to be worth a ton of money.
Yeah. Or maybe they repriced. Yeah. There's a lot of repricing going on. So we got a lot to talk about.
I'm actually putting a pin in marking in general as a VC Sunday school topic. Marking. I wrote it down. I have a bunch from our professional development in Miami.
Excellent. I want to really talk also on the show about strategies for productivity and time management. Have you ever done? I'm really trying to think about this. Yeah. But also like our time, like we were talking yesterday, you and I, about like, should we both be doing an interview? Like, so we're both going to do the interview today. It's a quick one, right? But like we could be doing twice as many interviews if we split them up, or the interviews could be longer. So we're just thinking about that.
I mean, I'll tell you, I'm happy to do hours on that because, as you know, I am an efficiency ninja.
Yeah.
Ninja.
And
I have a lot of thoughts on that and, smarter, not harder. And what an ROI.
That's what I'm going for. Smarter, not harder. I'm trying to think about this. I love this time blocking concept, which it seems like maybe a third of people seem to do. And this time blocking where I think you're working at home. There's a little work from home news. I saw Elon was like, hey, everybody, we're going back to the office. The end. If you don't come back to the office, you've resigned. I think he's like taking a slightly faster approach than Apple, which is like 1 day, 2 day, 3 day.
A
little bit faster.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw somebody asking about us in the Noti gang.
I guess, I try not to talk about all Elon all the time for obvious reasons, but I think we could talk about that one. Just the
remote work thing.
I think the wider back to work, I think was somebody using a term other than great resignation. Now there's something else, re-engagement. I don't know if there's a term for
maybe
there is a term people have been using for the going back to work. I don't know if it's like reconciliation or it's not resignation, but I think now this
emergence, something. I haven't seen it, but
everything's going back. In fact, today, interesting, I saw my schedule. Oh, we're having a board meeting in person in San Francisco and a board dinner. Would you like to come to dinner with the people on the board that you haven't seen in person in 2.5 years? And I was like, it's the first one. And I'm kind of like,
then you were like, do I?
Yes.
Right.
Well, I was like, okay, that requires driving to San Francisco, 25 minutes, parking 10 minutes, an extra hour of board meeting probably, because you're going to do a little socializing on the beginning and the end, and then 2-hour dinner. So I was like, okay, that's 5 extra hours. Okay, so that 5 hours is gone. And do I want to burn 5 hours for that experience?
I know.
And I'm like,
it's really hard because my extrovert is warring with my efficiency ninja.
Yes. This
like,
is
it becomes a question of ROI, right? What do you get for those 5 hours?
Yeah.
And how much of them are lost? Like if it's just time in the car, what else?
I basically would be leaving at 2:00 and getting back at 8:00. So it's really like 6 hours, I would think, of total time from door to door
for me.
6 hours. And if I just do the board meeting, it's an hour and a half. So it's an incremental 4 hours or so, 4.5 hours. Now, and if I have to eat dinner anyway, so I would eat dinner for an hour, right? So if I, take the hour of dinner and the hour and a half of the board meeting, that's 2.5. So it's really 2.5 versus 6 or 5.5, 6. So it's really an incremental, whatever that is, 3 hours or something.
That is a lot. And if you start to assign, I have a whole series of exercises. Like I ask everybody when I am managing or soft managing, like I want you to write down everything you do and tell me how long it takes you.
Yeah, we're doing that today.
Like everything, right? Like I just want you to write down every task you do. And that should include like all the times that somebody calls you and is like, hey, how do I do this? Or, whatever it is. Tell me how long it takes. Tom Merritt used to do this at CNET, and it would make me crazy because he would have this spreadsheet. And every time our crazy boss, who was like always an idea, like an idea machine, right? Now,
he was the backstop.
About this. Well, Tom would go in there with his freaking spreadsheet and he'd be like, cool, love that idea. What do you want me to drop from this list? And I was horrified by this. As like Northern Plains, you work until you die, girl. I was like, you just gotta like, but then pretty soon I noticed that like Tom was really producing great content, and I was like running around never finding time to pee and like mad at everything. I don't know. It was just a very interesting. So I have since tried to thread the needle between those two things. Like, okay, ROI is important because quality matters.
Yeah,
and also sometimes you just gotta like try stuff. And
I think if people are time blocking their time. And, because this is the big issue, we should actually, let's save this for a segment.
Tom on? I know we've got it. Yeah, let's do that.
I don't want to lose this as a topic, but write down the 2 or 3 bullet points.
Well, we'll talk about it with the remote work thing.
Yes. Okay, good. If you could bullet point, let's put a bullet point in there to talk about time management, time blocking, Tom Merritt story, and
efficiency.
One other thing.
ROI.
The ROI of it. But there was something else I wanted to talk about. Smarter,
not harder.
I think the negotiation between remote workers, the relationship between remote workers and productivity. I think if remote workers want to keep the remote work thing going, then it's on them to prove the productivity. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Strategies for remote workers convincing their boss to stay remote. That's the issue, I think, because I'm starting to feel this, like, are people playing video games and smoking weed at home? Would I know? Like,
Well, your outcomes would suggest otherwise.
You would think. And then when you look at 21 people's calendars and you see 5-hour blocks of nothing, you wonder.
Justin goes, I am for sure. Yeah. See, I'm not a believer in I'm not. Well, we will have this conversation. We will have.
So anyway, that's what I think is like, how do you get that out of people's heads, right? How do you remove from the boss's head, like, is everybody just playing video games now? Right. That's what boss's fears are, is like, some people are just abusing this. And so how do we negotiate that? Because I'm both, right?
Some always will be, if I'm being honest. But yes, let's talk to Tom now. We got a CEO on the line waiting for us, and then we'll have this conversation, and it'll be great.
Right. Where are the notes for this?
They are right here. I'll pop them.
I'll just do Control F drone.
They're not in the. They're not in the show notes doc. They're in their own doc.
Jason, can you confirm QuickTime?
Yes. Can somebody send me the DroneUp doc?
I just dropped him in the taping. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. There it is. Okay, I got that. And then here we go. QuickTime. Fire is loaded. Escape, Control, Shift, N, spacebar. Escape, Control, Shift, N, spacebar. It's repetitive tasks, folks. Talk about efficiency. All right, I am at 6 seconds. And why did that not come up? Oh, here it is. Tom Walker. All right, here we go. In 3, 2. All right, next up on the show, Molly and I were talking about drone delivery, and we were super excited that, unbeknownst to us, in America, Walmart is shipping stuff with a company called DroneUp, and it's actually happening. Mm-hmm. And I also got somebody from Ireland who's running a test, by the way, Molly, who said, hey, your premise that my premise was during that DroneUp talk here at Walmart was that this would work in the countryside really well, like, and that maybe cities were too dense, so it would kind of go least dense to most dense. But he said, hey, actually, we're in a kind of a dense suburb. And he showed me a picture in Ireland of, tens of thousands of flights that had been done for delivery. Mm-hmm. And so apparently these deliveries are starting to happen in less populated, but somewhat populated areas.
It's real. So we got pretty excited about this, but we also had a lot of just like logistical questions about the logistics of this. And so thank you to producer Justin, who just went out and got us the CEO of DroneUp, Tom Walker, who has a long history in super interesting things related to this. Did web development in the late 90s through 2017, was in the Navy as a web systems officer and nuclear power plant operator. And then now has started DroneUp, which has raised $13 million, last closed a $5 million round in November 2021. Walmart is an investor, and now these drones are in the air. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for your service, nuclear power plant operator, and in the Navy. So thanks so much.
You can tell I have ADHD. And a little bit of everything.
Have you seen Top Gun? I think that's my really most important question. Did you go see Maverick?
I saw it Sunday at lunch with my family. I did, finally.
And what'd you think?
I didn't think they could make one better, and they did.
Right?
Wow. Oh my God, I'm getting so much FOMO. I'm waiting for my daughter to come back from a trip she's on to see it with her. I'm probably going to see it Thursday night, but I am so excited.
It's only the second or third movie I've ever been to in my life where the audience gave an applause. So
yeah.
Wow.
I know we had that experience too. People were cheering. I saw it twice this weekend because I'm a giant nerd, but I'm glad that you liked it. I saw it with an Air Force buddy who was pretty impressed, even though obviously it was hard for her because Navy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But she appreciated. Her dad was a Navy pilot. Okay, we are way off topic now. We're really excited to talk about drones.
Yeah. So I guess we have a lot of questions. How many Walmarts are currently actively delivering stuff? Like, what is the state of this? Because when we hear about this technology 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, everybody was like, hey, this is going to happen. Then there was this 60 Minutes episode, if you remember, where Amazon showed it. And then it kind of went away for 4 years. And we've been all sitting here going, we were promised Starbucks, cups delivered and, our medicine. And yeah, we see things in Africa where people are doing the fixed wing, delivery of blood and parachutes. Like, it's a very cute situation. They don't have bridges and roads that can easily get this blood or medicine to places. So we kind of expect, I think, as consumers and technologists, okay, the most acute situations where people really need the technology is happening, but we weren't aware that this is happening. So what's the actual state? How many deliveries were done yesterday? How many stores have done it?
I don't have the exact count yesterday. I would assume dozens were completed yesterday. But where we are right now is we're open in 2 locations. So we're in Farmington, Arkansas, and in Bentonville. And over the course of the next several months, we'll be opening up 32 additional locations. So we'll be operating in 6 states. And in multiple cities. Each city that we'll be operating in will have a minimum of 3 locations. There's some logistical reasons why we do that. But by the end of the year, the goal is to have 34 fully operational. And then we're already planning for 2023.
You're headquartered in Arkansas, right?
We're headquartered in Virginia Beach.
Oh, in Virginia Beach, sorry.
Interestingly enough, I grew up in Arkansas, in a really small town in southern Arkansas. And when I left, I left and at 16 and said, I'm never coming back to this state. And it's like the mob, it just dragged me back. And then I realized, wow, Northwest Arkansas is actually a really nice place. And I didn't realize how nice it was. So we do have an office there, but we remain headquartered in Virginia Beach.
Gotcha.
How do consumers actually interface with the product? Are people being invited, or if you have that Walmart, can you just click a button and say drone delivery? And then how do you communicate what happens next to a consumer and know, or are they pre-invited because you've looked at Google Maps and see they have a big enough backyard? How does one opt into drone delivery in Arkansas?
Yeah, we like to say we're one of the only companies, if not the only company, that's doing store-to-door delivery 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And it's not limited to a handful of SKUs. It's not limited to any particular, I mean, obviously within a mile and a half of the store, obviously is our range right now. Talk about why maybe later. But so you go to DroneUpDelivery.com and you enter your address, and it basically says whether you're eligible for drone delivery. And now right now that's separate. Over the course of the next several months, that'll be integrated into the Walmart experience so that you won't have to kind of have two different experiences. But it's like any typical e-commerce order. You go, you put in your address. It checks a lot of conditions. It checks your location and where you are in the delivery area. It checks current weather. It checks if there are any type of issues going on, like first responder activity that could interfere. If none of those things are blockers for you being able to get delivery, then you can go on and search through the catalog. There's typically anywhere between 10 and 20, and in some of our larger stores, 30,000 items that are available for delivery. You place the order and pay for the order. Once the order is placed, typically in about 20 to 22 minutes, the package is delivered on your back porch. While we're en route, you get notified that the drone is en route. Please have all the children and pets and grandma in the house. And then once the drone is overhead, it lowers down to about 80 feet. It is visually inspected to make sure the area is clear, and then the product is gently lowered to the ground. The drone stays at 80 feet, and the product is gently lowered to the ground, set on the back porch, and leave. And in fact, because we stay at that high altitude, we've actually had people tell us that they didn't even realize the drone had shown up and delivered the product. So it's not noisy, it's not loud, it's not invasive.
Wow. So can we back up to like sort of your origin story? What made you get into this space and make, inroads into Walmart this quickly?
Well, I got into the space because I was in Best Buy one day and they had these drones for sale, and I started researching them, I was so enthralled that for less than a couple $1,000s, you could buy something in Best Buy that had more technology on it than the space shuttle did at the time. And so I actually bought one, took it home, and crashed it the very first day. But it was the information that the manufacturer shared with me in terms of how to analyze what had happened and what we had done. And I realized, wow, these are very, very powerful. And I believed, and my colleagues believed at the time, that drones were going to have an impact on society, positive or negative. And we wanted to make sure that we could do our best to ensure that it was positive.
So I have so many pragmatic, simple questions about this.
How this works.
Here's one. How do you decide what route to take to somebody's house? Because I was thinking that these things would be great for cities, including VTOLs, the ones that carry humans, the vertical takeoff. I was thinking, wow, if you're in a city by the bay, like we are in the Bay Area or Sydney or New York with a lot of waterways, you can just fly these things over the water. If they fall out of the sky, which is everybody's big fear, safety, it just hits the water. No harm, no foul in all likelihood. The chances of it hitting a boat are very low. So what route do you take? Do you go? I was thinking maybe you go along the highway so that if it falls, it hits a car, and that's more safe than not hitting a car, but maybe that's disastrous. So you go over, you plot routes that are over farmland. How do you route these for safety? I'm assuming.
It's a really good question. And we don't do any routing. So our software is completely autonomous. So the only thing that we tell the drone is the address, and it knows where it's taking off. And so it dynamically builds a route based on a lot of things. Number one is There's certain areas that are flagged in the system to not fly over. Don't fly over moving vehicles. Don't fly over people. Don't fly over schools. Don't fly over parks. Don't fly over churches. So you're right. Water routes, our system will automatically take those routes. If there's not a water route, it'll tend to take rooftop routes because these things are not that heavy. So if they go down and hit a roof, they might do some shingle damage, but they're probably not going to hurt anyone. And yes, there is a possibility somebody could be standing on a roof, but generally that doesn't happen. And it also detects cell phones from the ground. We don't know who it is or that type of data, but we can actually detect cell phone signals from the ground. If we see a conglomeration of 3 or more cell phones, it'll dynamically route around them. So it's always attempting to obviate flight over people. And then it's using different altitudes and different directions. One other thing we take into consideration is environmental conditions. If we're carrying a package, we would certainly like the wind. We like the tailwind. It makes it more efficient. When we're returning, we'll fly into the wind. And then we'll also adjust altitudes based on what the most efficient flight altitude is for that particular area or environmental situation.
That is fascinating. All that is happening automatically with software. So if somebody's having a backyard party or they're having a party in a park and there's 100 cell phones there, it's like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't fly over 100 cell phones. Pretty reasonable idea. That is incredible. What is the height they fly at and what is the speed they fly at? And why do you pick certain heights or speed?
So we have to stay below 400 feet always because that's FAA regulations. There are certain areas that have different flight ceilings, like around airports and other things that have different flight ceilings. We typically like to travel about between 180 and 200 feet is our travel altitude, and then lower down and deliver from 80. We can deliver from as high as 200, but for efficiency purposes, we like to lower down to 80 feet. It gets us in and out of there in under a minute. The reason that we chose that particular altitude is we burn the most energy on takeoff and landing. Because you think about these things, they're taking off. So the higher we go, we're burning 2% every 10 or 15 feet. So 200 feet is good because when we're flying over neighborhoods, especially when we're flying at night and it's quiet, they can barely hear it. It's much quieter even than an aircraft flying over. So it's low enough for efficiency, but high enough to ensure the sound profile is not obtrusive.
Yeah, like how much reserve battery is built into plotting every route? Because I would imagine that would be a concern if you find, there is that party in the park and we got to make a pretty big detour. Battery is not just the biggest limiter.
It's absolutely. I mean, right now in our operation, our 2 biggest costs are people and batteries, because we tend to keep that battery percentage reserve higher than it probably should be. But we operate very, very cautiously now. We have to. I mean, we've got to maintain the record of safety and demonstrate to the communities and to the regulators that we can do this safely. So we're probably more cautious in terms of the number of personnel available, and in terms of the battery percentage. But you got to remember too, we're always dynamically rerouting. So we're keeping about 40%, 35 to 40% reserve on the batteries, because the other thing that we do is if we detect a first responder activity. So if our system gets notified that there's a 911 call at a particular address or in a particular area, or a fire dispatch into a particular area, all of the drones that are in the air will dynamically reroute and deconflict with each other. So there's continual rerouting going on, whether it's information on the ground, whether it's additional data coming in, or if we sense a low flying aircraft from ADS-B, we'll automatically adjust the entire operating fleet's altitude down just to maintain a large margin of safety.
Do the drone companies all coordinate drone activity yet on a central database in some way? I know planes have, devices on them to let you know. I was actually in a small aircraft when a beacon went off and we looked off to the left, and sure enough, there was somebody flying who didn't see us, and we had to take in a, slightly evasive maneuver. I don't know what those are called in small aircraft, but do drones have a similar system where they're aware of each other? And is there like some database of this? Like, hey, there's drone activity in this area. So if another commercial drone operator or a police department was putting up a drone, I guess you would know because of the 911 call. But if, I don't know, a drone club, at a high school has 5 drones in the air, how do you know that you're not going to have drones crash into each other?
Yeah, that's one of the issues that our industry is trying to resolve now. So, for example, we have ADS-B So ADSB is what the airplanes use to let everybody know who they are, where they are, basic information about them. The FAA regulations say that drones can use ADSB-N, so we can hear the manned aircraft around them. Now, that's also making the assumption that they all have it, and they don't. Some of the smaller private aircraft do not have ADSB yet. But we can't squawk, so they don't. The planes don't have a way of knowing where we are yet. One of the things that's coming is what's called remote ID, and that's going to be a new requirement for operating drones in the U.S., where you are basically transmitting your location and some basic fundamental details to create that picture that you're talking about. One of the things that we did last year was we acquired AirMap, which is a UTM, unmanned traffic management platform that's being used in several places around the world. And one of the things that we do is we put all of our flights into that system, and we share that system. So anybody, public safety or the Department of Aviation or the FAA, they can see where all of our flights are. And then the other thing that we're doing to try to help promote commercial growth and collaboration is we are basically allowing any of the commercial operators that are operating in the same place to go in and reserve their volumetric airspace. So if they say, I need to do a commercial operation here, we let them go in and reserve that airspace, and then we dynamically route all of our delivery traffic around that space so that those commercial operators can continue to do their operations. And by doing that in certain areas where there'll be a high concentration of operators, we think that database, until remote ID is more fundamentally set, we think that will create that kind of airspace picture that you're talking about. We have to do that because all of our systems will deconflict our aircraft. Most of the operators that we're seeing on the other side or theirs will deconflict, but we have to be able to deconflict each other.
So you're building.
Go ahead, Molly.
We're probably going to say the same thing. I mean, it sounds like what you're creating is air traffic control for drones, so that not only are you the delivery network, but you're the provider potentially of this future logistical hub for managing all of this traffic.
Well, if you want to think over the horizon a little bit, I mean, you've got our drones operating in the air. You've got some of them are doing deliveries, some of them are doing drone services. You've got other drone operators in the air, public safety, and so forth. And then let's think ahead just a little bit to urban air mobility, when now you've got air taxis in the air, and then that means you've also got air ambulances in the air. So it becomes not just a matter of deconflicting the airspace, it becomes a matter of prioritization, right? How do we, if it's an ambulance and this is a medevac, you've got to be able to clear airspaces and corridors for those folks to move quickly through there. Now, again, that's down the road a little bit, but we have to be able to figure out a way to not just deconflict the airspace for safety purposes, but allow certain aspects to continue in certain conditions and certain operations that just have to be stopped at certain times.
Yeah.
I love the concept, Molly, of there being like lanes. So like, Walmart's like, hey, we're going to be taking this lane out and this lane back. It's almost like a dynamic flight plan where everybody knows, hey, this drone should be in this approximate height, 180 feet. And then if a drone's coming back, maybe the drones coming back are at the odd numbers. So 190, 210, 230, which I think planes do when they're going, I believe, east and west. One direction is an even number, 31,000 feet, and the other direction is 32. So this has been thought of before and thought through. You have so much volumetric space in air that you can actually do really interesting general rules like that. Here's a question, Tom. Are you currently monitoring every flight? So, because we did see you have these like really interesting, almost like a tower, but it looks like it's on some sort of a hinge, and we were guessing what that is. And then you had a platform to watch the drones, I believe, or an operation center. The drones typically have cameras. So during this early period where you're doing dozens a day, eventually become hundreds and probably low thousands in the next year, I'm guessing. Are you having operators watch, the item drop, watch the route, and just how many humans to drones, watching stuff do you have if you are using humans as safety matters?
We are. So right now, under current FAA regulations, we have to have a drone operator maintain visual contact or a visual observer, somebody has to maintain visual contact with the drone at all times.
Got it.
That is something that the industry, the FAA, Capitol Hill, everybody's working on how do we adjust those and lift the constraint on the industry so that we can kind of cut that back a little bit. Right now, it's one drone operator to one drone. There are a few of us who have waivers in right now to go one operator to 4 drones or 5 drones. From a standpoint of being able to scale without having to add that many bodies, that's going to be necessary. That is, I think it's 10725. It's an existing waiver that you can apply for. But our purpose in the tower, it is our air traffic control tower, the thing that you saw that looked like basically an mobile air traffic control tower. The reason that we do that is to give the pilot a better line of sight so that we can send the drone out further. So if you think about if you're standing on the ground at 5 foot, 10 inch eyesight, and the drone, it goes out and has to land or has to go down below, you would lose it. You wouldn't be able to go very far. So we keep the operator's line of sight. The operator's eyesight is at 31 feet off the ground. And because the drone can go down as low as 80, but as high as 100, you can see how that gives us much better view and longer range. And then with, enhanced lighting and other things, we maintain a really good visual on the drone.
So can one person watch more than one drone, or do you have to is it a 1-to-1 equation right now?
Today it's 1-to-1. They do offer, the FAA does approve waivers for that, but you have to prove to them that your software systems, your safety protocols, and your risk assessments are justify allowing you to do so. And that is one of our active waiver submittals we have right into the FAA right now is a 1-to-5 waiver application.
And 1.5 miles seems extremely doable given the battery. So I would assume part of this is as things get safer, the distance can go. And then eventually maybe you don't need to have somebody watching every one of them. Maybe there's 100 of them going out. And if they have an issue, that one pops up in front of the operator. So I'm curious, how does safety, what is your... Obviously, the goal is to have nobody ever get hurt and no drones to fall out of the sky. Obviously, that's not realistic. Accidents happen. And so I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking at delivery accidents that occur in the world in that neighborhood with Amazon or Walmart cars or Ubers or Lyfts, and then comparing the UPS and the FedEx drivers and their fender benders and the damage they cause to yours. Is that the benchmark? Or do you think your benchmark has to be 2 or 3 times higher, which is already where Tesla's autopilot is? I think the latest study that came out is like Tesla drivers who are in Teslas get in like a third as many accidents as when the same Tesla drivers are in their other cars. So a very interesting way to study it is not to compare Tesla drivers to other drivers, because then you got correlation issues. It's when they're in their gas-powered cars, if they have both, they get in more accidents with the gas-powered ones, which makes sense. It doesn't have the sensor kits. So how are you judging safety? What's a reasonable way to be judged? But how do you think the public is judging you? So
that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Well, everything we do is about safety. When you hear our conversations, we talk about safety throughout the day. It's almost become an obsession with us in terms of how often we discuss safety. And one of the things that I say to the new cohort groups that come on when we're getting ready to open a new hub, one of the first things I say when I walk into the room, and one of the last things I say when I walk out, is safety over revenues. We will take safety over revenue every single day. If there is any reason that I don't care if you've been on site 5 years or you've been on site 5 minutes, if something doesn't feel right, then we stop the operation. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to do that at first until they realize we weren't kidding. I think there's an enormous amount of pressure on it. We take the responsibility of having this opportunity to help move the industry forward. We take it humbly, but we take the responsibility of operating safely much more serious. And we look at that as the real opportunity to put numbers on the board. The problem right now, and I'm not being pejorative to the FAA when I say this, but we're being held in many ways to the same standards that crewed aviation, or we used to say manned aviation is held to. And so you start looking at the numbers of serious accidents that have happened by drone over the last 3 years, of the handful and I want to say 5 or 6 serious accidents that have happened that somebody was injured. In every single one of those cases, it was the operator who got injured. I mean, doing something like there was one where the drone just stopped responding, and so the guy decided to reach up and grab it and pull it out of the sky. Bad idea. And another one where the tether, they couldn't rewind the tether, so they tried to pull the drone out of the air using the delivery tether. They're not our people, right? Just want to point out that us, but it's obviously the real challenge, and this is what I remind everybody is, yes, we've got a great track record as an industry, but we haven't been flying 100,000 flights a day beyond visual line of sight, carrying packages in disparate environmental conditions and other, radio wave signals and things that we may or may not be aware of. So what we have to do now is take this opportunity while we're in that smaller radius to, like I said, put numbers on the board, demonstrate that we can be safe, and also have the opportunity to deal with some incidents that we've had to deal with incidents. I mean, and we learned from it. I mean, when we started in the early days, we were using 915 megahertz to connect to the drones. Now today we have multiple SIM cards operating over LTE with at least 2 providers and at least 2 SIMs per provider for reliability, plus other types of redundancy that we built in. And so
double duplex even on the connections. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. So multiple carriers, multiple SIMs per carrier. That's how we operate.
What instances have you had that are challenging? Have you lost a drone yet? And what did you learn from it?
So we've only of the heavy duty drones, the ones that are actually in production in the field, we have lost one that was not in the field. That was here in the test facility in Virginia Beach. Because, when as we're rolling them out, we think we know what the specs are, but, we have a group here, inside of DroneUp that sole job is to find out what those limits really are. And what kind of things can go wrong if, we'll put them in a scenario where we'll say, you've got to launch this drone really, really fast. We would never do this in the real world, but stuff like that to see what kind of things can go wrong. How do we catch these in risk cases where somebody might be going a little quickly? And that's what happened with one that we had here, but it was in the test field. It was in the test facility. And I say lost it. I mean, it's being repaired, but they did an unplanned altitude drop event.
Yeah. Got it.
I really want to come on a field trip and see the drone test pilots push them to their limits.
What is the speed now? And because I've seen these things back in the early days when they were uncapped. They didn't have limiters on them. And I saw these things doing 70, 80 miles an hour, I think. And it was terrifying. So is there a limit that the FAA has put on speed? What do you think the right speed limit is? Because it would seem to me that going fast means the shorter the trip, the more safe it is because you have less time in air, less things that can happen? Or is there some sort of curve of speed to safety and there's some optimal speed to safety? Because does going faster make it less safe or more safe because it's a shorter trip? I don't know. What have you learned?
I think the FAA, we don't go anywhere near this speed right now. So I think it's 100 miles per hour. I'll have to confirm that. But, none of us, we maintain about 25 miles an hour is about our maximum flight speed for a variety of reasons that are important. One is efficiency, battery efficiency. 2, well, let's start back with safety. At that speed, there's always the ability to take control, alter route, do whatever. Also at that speed, we found out that at 101,000 flights, we haven't had a single incident with a bird or something flying in the air. And that's a big deal for us, right? Because when I was in the Navy, it was all about coming into port, not hitting a whale. Here, it's all about not hitting a bird. People say, well, you don't want to hit the bird because it'll bring the drone down. It might, probably not, unless it was a really big bird with the drones that we're operating, but it's more about wanting to minimize. Look, part of the benefit here is that we're operating on batteries. There's no emissions from the drone. So let's go ahead and be one step safer, and let's try to do our best to protect the environment and the critters that were flying there before we were.
Yeah, totally. One last sort of big picture question related to all of this, FAA regulations, battery technology, adoption, consumer concern. What do you think that the time horizon looks like for this to be something that is totally commonplace when you're ordering online?
If you'd asked me that 2 years ago, I probably would have given you a much different answer than I'm going to give you now. But I think part of the test, I used to joke until 2 years ago, you had a better chance of getting hit by a stray golf ball in your bathroom than you did the news running a positive story about drones, right? Everything was negative, 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 negative.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit and we were given the opportunity to partner with Walmart on the COVID test kit delivery, I think it was an interesting moment for our industry because people were scared. They wanted to know if they had COVID. A lot of them didn't want to get in the car. They didn't want to sit for hours in these lines. So it was the first time for them to be able to order these kits and have them delivered at home and then just drop them in the mail and send them back. It was amazing the number of people who, even during the COVID test kit delivery in Cheektowaga and North Las Vegas and Texas and El Paso, who wouldn't drive up to the store to get tested, but would order the COVID test kit, have it delivered, and then drive to the store to tell us how amazing the experience was. And I think that's when we really started to see a shift, and people went, well, they're not loud. They're not noisy. We explain to them, we go in and we do community outreach and we tell them we don't record any video while we're flying. We don't take any pictures. Even when we first started, we were taking a picture of the package just to show it's delivered, kind of like an Amazon driver does. So you'll get a picture that says delivered. We don't even do that. So from the time that we take off to the time we land, we're not recording, we're not taking pictures. And we tell the communities this. And I'll tell you, in Arkansas right now, we have people who drive up to the hub every day and ask, when are you going to be able to deliver to my house? When are you going to be able to deliver to my house? And we'll tell them and they'll come back. But to your question on when it's going to be commonplace, I think it's going to happen a lot more quickly than people think. I mean, here's what we've got to overcome. We've got 3 different drones that we're working with right now. We've got these drones right now that you're seeing the pictures of. Those are being replaced next month by another drone. That'll have about a 3 to 5 mile range that out and back, and we'll be able to go a little bit faster. The next generation drone that's coming out is not a quad; it's a totally different drone, and that's going to have about a 90-minute flight time, and it'll be able to travel at about 80 miles an hour. So
holy
we're
cow,
already,
that sounds like a super game changer.
Pretty awesome.
That means you're going
it is
20
a game
miles
changer,
away?
but it's great that we can go that fast and that far. But the problem is we're still stuck with regulatory issues, right?
Yeah,
In
line
order
of sight,
to,
yeah.
And because the FAA, we just finished this process with the FAA, called the BVLOS ARC, Aviation Rulemaking Committee, and giving recommendations. We've got 3 or 4 paths that we think are going to crack the door open for going beyond visual line of sight. But what I tell the industry, and I remind everybody, is everybody wants to go BVLOS. They say, look, our industry would just explode if we could fly beyond visual line of sight. And I ask all the time, okay, which one of your businesses is not able to scale now because you can't fly BVLOS? Well, the reality is nobody's proven that that's limiting. What we're doing now by starting to do these deliveries and then hitting a concentration level where if we could go 1 more mile, we could increase, delivery revenues by 45, 50, 60%. And if you've got 200,000 safe flights at a mile or a mile and a half or mile 1.2, give me the chance to go to 2. And I think that starts to increase it. And when you think about over 90% of the U.S. population lives within 10 miles of a Walmart, and you've got basically a couple of 100,000 SKUs that are designed for the audience that lives around that Walmart, these become distribution centers and that are provide an incredible opportunity. And then the last thing I'll say is we are right now at about 22 minutes from the time you place the order until it's delivered. 70% of that time is trying to get the product out and to the drone. And we think through optimization over the next 12 months, we'll get that down. And our goal is to be delivering in under 15 minutes here in the next, say, 8 to 10 months.
Wow.
Well, I mean, eventually the Walmart will be built such that or an Amazon facility or whatever facility will be built such that you'll be able to go right up to the roof with the pack of batteries or, donuts or whatever it is. I'm ordering donuts, but those donuts going right up to the roof, the operators will be on the roof already, and you won't need to build another air traffic controller because it'll be a high enough roof, and the distance will be covered in 5 minutes. It'll just go straight up to the roof with some other
have like
robot,
those
right?
pneumatic tubes like in the old banks, and it'll just, shoot
Something
stuff.
like that, right? There's
Yeah.
got to be a better efficiency here in terms
Absolutely.
of the roof that already exists in these places.
Well,
right?
and remember, at some point, you don't necessarily even have to have an operator there with the drone. So once you can fly beyond visual line of sight, we have another type of operation called Telepresent Operation. We actually test that today, where we can fly drones from here in Virginia Beach. We can take off and land and fly routes in other countries. And obviously we do it in other countries because it would be a violation of FAA. So we're in safe areas in other countries. We take the drones off and fly them from here dynamically. At some point, once we've proven the viability of these platforms, and we've proven that the parachutes work, and that your mean failure rate is 1 in 150,000 hours, but by maintenance you mitigate. Once we demonstrate, that's our responsibility as an industry, is to not just prove it to the policymakers, not just prove it to the regulators, but we've got to prove that to the general public. And the best way we can do it is with these controlled, safe operations that we're doing, like we're going to be doing for the rest of this year in communities where they can come out and see it and see how we do business. And that's not just DroneUp. I feel the entire industry is working together to try to prove that, and we will.
Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious to anybody who has even moderately studied this that drones are safer than cars driving on the road. Anybody who's watched a delivery driver under the gun getting paid per delivery is going to know that a human driving a car on the roads is much more dangerous. There's pedestrians, there's other cars and other vehicles to hit. So that's obvious to everybody. And then let's face it, recreational aviation, it's not the safest thing in the world. I mean, every day, sadly, every couple of days, we see a Cessna or a Cirrus or a Pilatus or something goes down here in the United States. The FAA does incredible job breaking down the massive amount of user error that happens almost universally. You know this because you're in the field. It's an error on takeoff or landing or a maintenance issue. If you watch the Blanco Lirio channel on YouTube, which maybe you do or don't, but if you don't, there's a really good channel called Blanco Lirio, and this commercial pilot breaks down every accident every day. It's unbelievable. I watch it, and I gave him money on Patreon because I'm so obsessed with watching this. It's always the human, whether it's the human in maintenance or the human, behind the controls. And when these drones are going out with the amount of software in them, they're just going to be 1,000 times safer than humans at a minimum at this point in time, I think. So really,
you're right. I mean, it always comes down to decision chain, right?
Yeah,
the decision chain. And somewhere along the way, yes, there may have been a mechanical failure, but it's way too often it's either the response to that failure or a series of bad decisions that ultimately end up in most of those. And because autonomy has reached the point where it is, and the sensors that we have and the safety thing, for example, on the generation drone that's rolling out now with us, if it senses a drop of more than a certain amount in a certain amount of time, or a tilt or excessive vibration, it has a ballistic parachute that shoots out. It shuts off all of the engines. It disconnects the batteries, and it makes this god awful noise. But for a reason, obviously, as it's floating to the ground, is to try to notify anybody that, hey, because you can't hear it, it's just coming out of the air as a parachute. But, it lands, softly enough that you take the drone back, you figure out what happened, and it wouldn't create the type of havoc that a 170, 2 or 182 coming down in the same condition would.
Yeah. I mean, understatement of the century. Like these, we had a pilot here, he's not able to fly in fog or whatever. All he had to do recently, just crashed into the headlands here in San Francisco. Tragically, he was going out for a lunch ride from Sacramento to Half Moon Bay, and all he had to do was just go up. But he was afraid to call in a Mayday, and he didn't want to fly up apparently. And if he had just flown up, he wouldn't have hit the mountain. Instead, he just did a corkscrew until he hit something. And it's just these crazy tragedies, as you're saying. Humans don't follow the protocols. They have all kinds of biases. The machines follow the protocol. They almost universally make the right decision. Something's wrong. You lose a rotor, you pop the parachute, you live to fight another day. Humans are embarrassed. So many pilots have died because of just the sheer embarrassment of, I need help. It seems like the hubris is, a significant percentage of the problems humans are making here, and also being human.
Right.
Suboptimal decision making. Listen, this has been amazing. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
I'm really excited that you're doing this, Tom, and we can't wait. Cities, that's what, a decade away, you think?
I know. Where are we in the cities part of this? I put in my address already, even though I knew better.
It's kind of in the burbs.
It's kind of funny. People say, "Is this better in rural? Is this better in urban? Is this better?" It's in between. Because if you're too rural, then there's not enough density around you within your delivery radius for it to make economic sense. But when you're in cities, then what you end up with is a lot of multi-dwelling, family dwelling issues, and how do you deliver to them? We have a solution that we're going to be rolling out in Q4 this year that we're pretty excited about, which will allow drone delivery to condos, hotels, campuses. And so we'll be doing that. But the issue with cities is we're not ready for that yet. And that's one of the things I think our industry also has to keep reminding ourselves is just because we think that we know what we're doing, and just because we drive safety, we also have to acknowledge that things can go wrong. We were flying out in North Las Vegas at 150 feet. And a police helicopter saw something on the ground that got their attention, and they went into a dive and literally came down to about 100 feet over the ground to look at something. And this is out near the desert. And if it hadn't have been for the quick reaction of the pilots and the systems realizing what was going on, could have had a tragic end. The question is who was responsible for that? Well, technically, the helicopters out there have a floor they're not supposed to go below. So the situation generally, back to your point, is who has priority in the airspace, and how do we figure out how to mutually respect those lines that drive that safety? But in the meantime, we have to do the very thing I taught my troops in the military, and that is be ready for the unexpected, because like the great philosopher Mike Tyson once said, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. So we have to be ready for that.
Yeah. Well, listen, continued success. This is awesome. And we just love the fact that you're doing this and taking it so seriously. I can't think of a better person to do this. You're taking it with a lot of responsibility. And I think that's going to pay off. It may be a little bit slower. You may get there, a little more, a couple of quarters behind maybe somebody here in Silicon Valley who wanted to go faster and take more risk. But I think it's the right move, because you're going to be judged to a much higher standard because it's a new technology, and you're well aware of that. So continued success. Thanks for coming on the pod,
Tom Walker. We appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Take good care. Talk soon.
All right. Well, we need you to upload that file, but really appreciate you coming on.
Yes, but at every other thing. Yeah. I know we were all set to talk to you for 20 minutes or so, and we're just like, we could clearly go all day.
Absolutely. Great job.
Justin's, I think, is going to pop on and give you some tips on how to upload that file if you didn't already.
Got it.
Yeah, I just sent a Google Drive link in the private chat and to your email as well. So if you can save that QuickTime file for us, or stop it and save it and then upload it, we'll be good to go.
Fantastic.
Done. It's uploading.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you a lot. Yeah, come back anytime. Thank you a lot.
Thank you a lot. That was great.
It
was interesting.
Fascinating.
Somebody in the thing was like, you're not asking hard enough questions. I was like, what is the hard question we missed here? I mean, we talked about these things falling out of the sky.
Some people hate it, right? Like some people hate it conceptually.
Why? What's the downside?
Because they don't know about buildings and airplanes and all the other things that humans have done to like mess up I mean, listen, I understand the idea that like, if you want to look up in the sky, you don't necessarily, like buzzing drones, like aesthetics and sound. I mean, I will say electric drones don't have to be very loud.
No, they're much quieter than trucks driving packages
and planes.
And planes.
Think about planes. Like, have you ever seen those videos where like a plane goes over and every bird is like, boom?
Yeah.
Like,
I wonder.
But I will say a drone flew over my house the other day, and I was like, I will shoot that fucker. Right. Like it sort of hovered in front of my window and I was like, I will come for you. So the privacy is a real question.
Yeah.
But it's also like, that's not a thing we're used to. So when a drone flies over my house now, I know it's not from Walmart. I know it's some asshole looking in my window and I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a difference between somebody going 20 stories above your 1 or 2 story house. They're 18 stories. You don't even notice them. And they're going 25 miles an hour. They're not lingering.
Yeah.
That's one situation. The situation I don't like, because I had this happen as well, is somebody was flying a drone, around our neighborhood. And it was kind of obviously looking at us in the backyard. And like, that to me is kind of weird and creepy. Like, these things have high res cameras on them. They're obviously going around, and it's, they're peeping Toms, looking at people. And there is something disturbing about somebody flying something over your house to watch you. That's why I think he was very, specific. I don't know if you noticed, he said, we don't record anything. So we could record.
They don't even take pictures of the drop off, like no camera at all.
I want a looped video of the drop off. That should be a checkbox I get to put in. I would like to see it land in my backyard.
Yeah, you wouldn't, but if there was,
it'd be kind of cool.
I mean, I guess then it would
cool,
exist. But
then it exists on a hard drive somewhere.
We'll get
I guess
there.
That's
we'll
not
get
bad.
there. Yeah.
You made a good point. We should leave this in the show, this little post discussion. You made a good point about in our chat about the number of crashes happening with the increased drivers
vehicles,
and so one of the things that's happening is, as we all order more e-commerce and we stop going to stores, is the number of rides being done, the amount of deliveries, the amount of delivery trucks is massively increasing in the world, which of course means more crashes. So maybe give us a couple of these stats here, Molly.
I mean, and I don't think these ones even include Amazon. There have been some stories about Amazon delivery vehicles specifically because they've got those huge trucks and also let people use their own cars. But just if you're looking at UPS, DHL, and FedEx, since 2012, UPS cars, the number of crashes has increased by 38%. DHL express vehicles, the number of crashes has increased by 100%. And the number of crashes involving FedEx vehicles has increased by 254%. That was between 2012 and 2021. And those, again, don't even include the Amazon delivery vehicle crashes, which in my quick duck during the show, I didn't find.
So what we need to know here is the number of miles driven. So if the number of miles driven, doubled in that time period or tripled in that time period, they might in fact be safer. I don't know, so that's the one thing I don't know is the denominator here of what's changed. We're looking at the number of crashes in a vacuum, but anyway, net, there's more crashes on the road. Now crashes per mile driven, who knows? But the bottom line is, I think these are going to be massively, I think like 10x, 100x safer than deliveries being done other ways. It's not going to be for every delivery. It's going to be things that are, 10 pounds and under now. Maybe it gets to 20. Maybe there's some limit that we don't want hundreds of pounds in the air, 20 stories above us. But I could see these things dropping off. You could have 5 drones dropping off your groceries, 50 pounds worth of groceries, 10 pounds at a time. And they just back to back, every 2 minutes show up at your house and you just have boom, 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 boom. Can you imagine going out like you're having a barbecue and you're like, it'd be great if we had more chips and salsa. And it's like beep, beep, boop, chips and salsa dropping from the sky. I mean, how many times are you like, I would like some salsa. We're out of
right. And I'm going to be sorry, sick. These are zero emissions vehicles, right? They're electric drones. They don't contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. Like there are always going to be trade-offs, but if we live in a world where people want deliveries, everything is going to, as somebody just said, have pros and cons. And I think this has more potentially pros than cons.
This is an interesting
also
chart.
Like, as we've been saying, Tom is exactly the kind of guy that you want in charge of this, right? Like
you don't want a 22-year-old Silicon Valley
who's just like farther, faster, bigger. And then you've got him like running out of battery and falling out of the sky. And you got like the fact that they're basically trying to build in air traffic control for drones, like figure out who has priority. Like that's what has to happen. It's got to develop in a way that allows for a healthy ecosystem as opposed to like one company winning it all and killing anybody in their path.
I'm trying to figure out this chart here. This is a chart of injury rates by injury category for Amazon delivery system, Amazon DSPs, and non-Amazon delivery in 2021. Injuries per 100 FTEs. I don't know what FTEs are.
Full-time equivalents.
Oh, full-time equivalents. Okay. So 18 out of 100 folks got injured, lost time, light duty, or other. So what is a DSP, an Amazon delivery system?
Service provider. So those are the third parties contracted by Amazon,
use their own cars,
running
right?
small logistics fleets as part of Amazon Flex and other things.
So with the P at the end means partner, and Amazon delivery system is them, and non-Amazon delivery. So basically the delivery partners, I think what happens is, what Amazon is doing, I think this has been criticized a whole bunch, is in order to have it be cheap and fast, if you put a delivery partner as opposed to one of your own employees, you then obscurify and you create a jump in liability, both for the driver, their insurance, whatever. And let's face it, somebody running these small operations will take more risk than somebody who's a manager at Amazon. So by having delivery system partners, DSPs, they're shielded a little bit from their behavior. And it's just like Google or Facebook. They use people to review content who are not employees, they're contractors, so that they have a little bit of a shield. It's a little bit of a management trick, in terms of responsibility.
Yeah.
And you see it here in the numbers. So you're the manager and you've got your own little mom and pop shop of, 50 drivers in Arizona. You're trying to make money. You hire people for less. You demand they go faster. You don't pay them overtime, whatever it is. You skirt some rules and you increase performance, but then also increase injuries. So
BuzzFeed and ProPublica did a big story back in 2019. I knew that there was something about this that talked about these Amazon delivery vehicles and the deaths that they were causing. And I mean, I think it was like they'd been involved in 60 accidents in 1 year, maybe 13 fatalities. I mean, it's if you actually it gets to our exact point. If you prioritize speed and cost efficiency overall, you're going to get people killed.
Listen, there's a safety knob, there's a speed knob, and there's a cost knob. And if you want to play with the knobs, that's part of running a business. We get it. But when you got that safety one, you're kind of obligated to maybe not turn up the speed one as much and just think it through. And, Theranos is the perfect example. She's trying to go faster than she should. She should have gone slower and did one test, then two tests, right? Like this guy's the anti-Elizabeth Holmes. Yeah. He's like, we're going to do a line of sight, then we're going to go to 5 miles. I'm like, why can't we go further? Oh, you're on 25 miles an hour. My natural inclination would be go 50. And it's like, well, why? Yeah. Why, if we have, what if that, contributes 10% chance to our chances of getting in an accident, 1% of our chances to get in an accident? Why would you even do that? And so move fast and break things when you're building SaaS software is completely different than when you're flying drones over people's heads or doing blood testing, or doing delivery, last mile delivery. So it's just something to keep in mind when you hear that phrase. If you're a founder, move fast and break things, totally fine in your office. With software, you want to challenge a server to, run more cron jobs faster. And, that's like one thing, you want to push your iPhone to the limit with your video game, like move fast and break it. Yeah. Crash the iPhone. Don't crash the car or the drone. All right. We got some other news. So should we do that news story as if it's the first story then, Justin? Is that what you want us to do? Yeah.
I think that would be great.
Molly, do you have one that you want to start with?
So then should we just do a quick outro from the conversation we just had? Okay, it's been a great show. Because that's going to be the end of this show.
That'll be the end of the show, right?
Why don't we do that? And then we'll,
3-2.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. Obviously, we want to hear more of your thoughts on what you think, right? What do you want a drone delivery in a town near you? But I can say that for my part, at least, as we have said ad nauseum, big fan of Tom Walker. Big fan.
Yeah, like it. And if you want to suggest any We Live in the Future content, producers at thisweekinstartups.com. We always love when founders out there and fans of the show give us ideas for things for We Live in the Future, things that feel like science fiction, but are becoming, science reality. We love those. Every day. Yeah. So definitely put in the subject line, We Live in the Future, or WLTIF.
All right. See you
or
tomorrow,
something like
everybody.
that. Yeah. All right. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Now, which story do we do up top? You like
I think
venture capital is kind of expected.
We really like the Deutsche Bank, right?
That's kind of crazy, and I don't know anything about it. So
Yeah.
let's do that. 3, 2. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. We got a great interview with you on the second half of the show about DroneUp, and so you're going to love that. We go into massive details about the actual drone deliveries happening in Arkansas right now by a company called DroneUp, and with their partner that you may have heard of, Walmart. It is a super compelling discussion, and this technology is here earlier. Is actually happening. So maybe not earlier than we expected, but they're actually doing it, Molly. It's pretty impressive, huh?
Yeah. And I would argue it is earlier than we expected for some reasons that we talk about in the show that gave me a little bit of a series idea for the COVID fast forward.
The COVID fast forward, yes. I mean, this technology, like telemedicine and food delivery, is certainly benefited from, hey, we can't leave our houses. We need a COVID test. Well, drone delivery seems like a great way to get it and not have to have human interactions. But there's other news.
Yes.
And this Deutsche Bank getting rated one seems crazy.
Yeah.
I saw this and I don't understand exactly what's going on. So maybe, Molly, you can educate me and the rest of the audience on the Deutsche Bank issue. Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting. So the Deutsche Bank issue is happening in the context. So the headline here is that Deutsche Bank was raided by German law enforcement because of alleged fraudulent advertising of sustainable investment funds. What makes this a super interesting story is A, the bank was raided by German feds, but B, this is all happening in the context right now of the SEC here in the United States starting to roll out and float trial balloons on way, way, way tougher requirements around ESG. What can qualify as an environmental sustainability and governance type investment. So there's this sort of basket of investments that, you know, are maybe green or they're about corporate governance. Why those things got welded together, I will never know. But it's gotten environmental, social, and governance. So are you a fund or a company that is environmentally responsible, does a social good, or has, you know, progressive governance?
Governance being your board of directors has a woman on it, a person of color, an employee representative. Basically a standard. ESG is kind of the concept, at least. And the intent seems good. Right. The execution seems kind of screwed up right now. But it's supposed to be good for society is the intention. It doesn't seem to be happening, though. Yeah,
exactly. So this, well, you know, I mean, it's sort of like, does awareness matter? So I guess there was that question. But there is this a move afoot to crack down on what is considered ESG and to get tighter disclosures. So that's sort of the context for the fact that now German authorities have not only declared that there was some greenwashing at Deutsche Bank, but because they're a lot tougher there, went in and searched, you know, tossed the place looking for evidence that could support allegations, according to a spokesman for the public prosecutor in Germany, of prospectus fraud. So basically Deutsche Bank saying, yeah, we've got these funds, they're super ESG, it's all like really green. And the German authorities were like, no.
Okay.
These appear to potentially have been lies, asset managers promising a certain thing with respect to these investments that didn't turn out to be true.
So prospectus fraud, when you start a fund and you ask rich people to invest in it, you make a prospectus, you say, hey, these are going to be green funds. And then they invested in non-green funds. So the German authorities said, hey, this is illegal. And so, or at least that's the claim here. And it was strong enough of a situation to raid it, which is just, super disappointing. Like, why would you go through creating an ESG fund to dupe people to then invest it in non-ESG? I'm thinking about the motivation here. I guess it's just money. I guess they were going to make more money investing in non-ESG stuff, but the public doesn't want to invest in non-ESG stuff, so they ran a shell game.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, I think like Eric Garland, who I think is a former federal prosecutor, right? A former DOJ guy. Is that the guy? Basically was like, isn't Deutsche Bank kind of raided every week or two now?
There has
it's
been
a very complicated bank.
Yes.
Overall.
They were raided for money laundering at some point, and Yeah.
They
Seems
admitted,
strange.
let's see, in 2021, admitted a breach of 2021 DOJ tied to ESG reporting failures. Like they've had a whole bunch of issues related to this specifically, and other issues. There's like a whole long Donald Trump thing. There's a whole bank crisis.
Yeah, that was the whole
within
Donald Trump, like who gave him the loans
Deutsche
kind of
Bank.
thing.
Yeah. But I
Never
think like
found that out. Yeah.
it's, later in the show, we're going to talk about this idea of like moving really fast and potentially moving so fast that you break things and put a stink on an entire industry. You could argue that ESG was, a concept designed to incentivize stakeholder capitalism, to encourage companies to green their operations, to reduce their own financial risk and also operate a little bit better. But then what happened is that you ended up with skewed incentives. If you could make a lot for a long time, it was like money was just pouring in to these ESG funds with not a lot of oversight. So it was like a quick way to make a buck. So of course people started cheating, right? It's just a story about incentives over and over and over. Yeah. And of course, if somebody was going to cheat, it just sort of feels like, of course, it was Deutsche Bank.
Well, and then it's like there's some way, I know Elon was talking about this, like the S&P had some ESG rankings. And so it seems like it's pretty easy to game the rankings. So there's some sort of scorecard, and Tesla came off the ESG rankings, and then I think Exxon was like at the top of them or something, and we're just all like, what exactly is happening here with this? And it's show me an incentive, I'll show you an outcome. I think people are gaming the system quite obviously. And these ESG things feels like a giant grift and fraud, and the people who are making the money from it are lawyers.
I mean, there are bigger grifts and frauds, to be clear.
I'm sure. But I mean, when Exxon is gaming it, like they're producing all the oil in the world and burning a hole in the ozone layer, and they're at the top of the rankings. I don't know how this makes sense. So anytime these regulations come out, I've seen it, like the attorneys and the accountants and the consultants seem to really clean up.
Yeah.
And
what I would argue, and I'm actually super happy because it showed up in the Wall Street Journal today, Rochelle Toplinsky wrote an opinion piece in the Journal saying exactly what I've been saying, which is like the environmental part of this needs to come out. Like the fact that we've sort of welded on, environmental reporting and risk disclosure and things related to the climate crisis with social and governance and sort of social good and DE&I, like, yes, these are intertwining in some ways. There's a huge like climate justice component here. There's environmental racism. Those things are all real. But the fact is, like, as companies pursue risk disclosure, climate neutral policies, net zero, that's like goals. That's all business. And that's all necessary business. And I'm going to put this in a way that's going to get me yelled at, but it was always going to be too messy, I guess, to combine these things. Like companies need to have environmental goals and goals related to the climate crisis. Companies need to have DE&I policies and diversity that makes them stronger businesses. But the idea that those are somehow the exact same policy has created a lot of like messiness around what these funds do and accomplish and should include. Yeah,
they seem like separate issues and they should be changed. It's breaking news here. Somebody just tweeted at me that, when we had that OpenSea story, remember that, where the employees at OpenSea were front running the market, and they're quoting me here. I don't know if this is my exact quote, but somebody says, Jason said that, OpenSea needed to take action against the rogue employee. And it said, this is my quote. I don't know if this is actually accurate. They need to sue the employee. I know that sounds crazy. And it looks like they in fact have. And
so this was the story where that for the product manager committed insider trading. Oh, right. So they were trading NFTs.
Right. Before they were publicly available, I guess. And so, DOJ charges former OpenSea executive in first NFT insider trading case. Prosecutors allege the former OpenSea head of product, Nathan Chastain, used insider knowledge to trade NFTs for profit. Department of Justice, I'm reading from Vice. The Department of Justice charged a former executive at OpenSea in connection with an NFT insider trading scheme. The agency announced Wednesday. It is the first time, that's today, that such a charge has been laid out in the realm of digital assets. This will be the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
Predict there will be, and remember I said that, like, everybody in crypto thinks the rules don't apply because it's not a stock. But if you're selling these things and they quack like a duck and they look like a duck, and it's kind of obvious, like, this is going to get prosecuted at some point. I think this is just the beginning. The DOJ and the SEC, like, they seem to take like 5-10 years to build these cases. So ICO cases happened over the last couple of years, and ICOs happened 5, 6, 7 years ago. And now I think all this NFT stuff, if people were painting the tape, as everybody seems to think was the case, how many people were painting the tape at OpenSea or other platforms? In other words, creating wash trades, fake trades to make people think this NFT is going up. And they're like, well, you can technically do it. And if that is your benchmark for behavior, that it's technically possible.
Yeah.
It's technically possible to create a super drug called fentanyl that gets people super high and then takes them to the edge of an overdose. Like, doesn't mean you should do it. So here we are again in terms of responsibility.
So he knew. So it looks like he knew. I was trying to remember this story because there was some other story where we talked about insider trading, and it was like trading, and it was like these ding dongs who only made themselves $1 million and were super obvious. This was less than that, but he was the guy who was responsible for selecting what NFTs would be featured on the front page of OpenSea. So he was like, so it'd be like if you were, at Apple and you knew what was going to be promoted in Apple podcasts, and then assuming that podcasts made any money, right? Yes. You like somehow front ran those podcasts. So he was in charge of promoting the NFTs. And so then he obviously bought them first. Yes. Then they got promoted, and then he resold them at 2 to 5 times. He flipped them.
It's just crazy. The story you're referring to refresh everybody's memories, the SEC charged 3 Twilio employees with insider trading, and they were like engineers. And at the time, we had a similar comment, which is like, if you work at OpenSea and you're the product manager, you must be making 6 figures. You own equity in the company that might be worth millions of dollars potentially. You could just buy, if you actually did understand NFTs, you could just buy them after they were released to the public, because you'd probably still have enough information, and you could just use public information, right? And you could disclose, I'm buying this NFT, I have an affinity for it, on day 2 of trading. Who's going to, if this person bought these on day 2 of trading, could anybody complain? I don't think so. That would be like, I work at Nike and I bought the shoes after they were for sale for 2 days, but I just, I wanted to own a couple of pairs of them, as opposed to, I think there was a Nike person who was actually stealing the Nike shoes and front running them in that market. So front running a market, we're learning tricks. Front running a market, using inside information to front run the market, painting the tape, wash trades, all this stuff is going to be coming out. So this will be a parade of malfeasance that we'll be dealing with for some time. And in other news today, is there anything else we should cover? We have the venture capital story.
If you wanted to talk about...
We have the Reddit write down.
Oh, the go back to work. And the Reddit write down.
Go back to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to reference it, Elon Musk had just put out a tweet about remote work at Tesla, which could be a news segue into your
let's do that. Let's do the Fidelity markdown. I can do that we can do that in like 2 minutes. 32. Fidelity is marking down its share of startups. So when you're in the private investing business, you do an audit every year. You may or may not mark stuff down that you've invested in at a certain valuation. When you're one of these more public, larger entities, I think you have to do this quarterly. And so Fidelity, according to information compiled by our friends at Bloomberg, has marked down some private market investments. So this is a judgment call they make based on what's happened in the public markets. They start marking down investments they made in private corporations. We all know Reddit had filed to go public. Fidelity marked them down 36%. They marked Stripe down about 13%, and Instacart 48%, which I think Instacart had taken that medicine themselves in order to reprice their employee options. But this is standard operating procedure. They now say Reddit, which they had, I guess, marked at over 60 billion. Now they're marking down at 39 billion. That still seems incredibly high. and Instacart went from 125 billion or so down to 60. If I'm
Sorry,
reading
no,
these charts
those
correct.
I think that's dollars per share.
Oh, sorry, 3, 2, 1. And so if you look at dollars per share, looks like Reddit peaked in Q3 of 2021 at $62, and now is at $39. They're actually, because these are going to be public companies, are obviously talking about the actual share price now. $125 for Instacart, now down at like $62. So wise thing to do, and just more indicative of the medicine being taken, Molly, so that people can then not keep crashing. And if you reset the peg and you say, hey, here's where the number is, now it can go up again. So you take this hard medicine and, hey, your house isn't worth what you thought it was, is what's happening here. In these public markets, it happens quicker. In a public market, it happens instantly because it's an open market. In crypto, it's a 24-hour market. It happens instantly. In private companies, these type of investors, the Fidelities of the world, have to report. They have a higher reporting in their funds because they have large other institutions in there, I guess, and they do it quarterly. So this is just more proof that public valuations that are reset are impacting private companies. But you'll notice these numbers are slightly lower than what happened to public companies, which went down 50 to 85%. So you don't see 50 to 85% here.
Right. Totally. I want to have a longer conversation in our BC Sunday school, but yes, what it shows is that the contagion, the virus is spreading, if you will forgive a really unfortunate metaphor. That rumors of a downturn have not been exaggerated.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about productivity and the remote work sort of train ending for certain folks. Apple went to 3 days a week. They had some resignations, but we haven't heard anything since then. And so people are going back to work. I was on a couple of phone calls this week or the last 2 weeks, and people were on the Zoom from their offices, which is a weird experience. When 3 people are in the window, you're like, whoa, what are you all doing in the same Zoom window? There's 3 of you. And what is this background?
Are you at a party?
Conference? And they're like, no, we're in our conference room. You are the ones who are at home. And so all of a sudden this is getting real. And actually today I have to make a decision, Molly. I'm going to need a little bit of your help here. I have a board meeting at 2:30 that I can go to in person. I love this company. Incredible. It's one of our top performers. I also got my parents in town, my brother. And they invited me to come to dinner with the board, which we haven't done in like close to 3 years now, over 2 years with the pandemic. So I'd have to leave my house at 2 for the 2:30 board meeting, hour and a half board meeting. Gets us to 3, 4 o'clock. Then we have a 5 o'clock dinner. So there'd be an hour of like work I could do independently in a conference room somewhere. And then dinner 5 to 7. So 2 to 7:30, maybe I get home looking at, a lot of time out of the house, but I'm kind of missing people and I want to go, but my mind goes to productivity. It's probably, if I did go to dinner on my own, if I had dinner on my own or with my parents, that would be an hour anyway. So this looks like it adds 2 hours, 3 hours to my day of extra stuff. Do I want to give up 2 to 3 hours? Am I looking at it the right way, Molly? Or should I just be happy to see humans and build bonds? What should I do?
Know. I think this is going to be the question of the future because, you know how I feel about time, right? Like I am murderously protective of my time. I call it unobtainium. It is the most precious substance in the universe. No more of it can ever be created, and so on and so forth. And so constantly for me, it's this question of ROI. Like when I convinced Marketplace years ago to let me work from home, it was by saying like, effectively, you pay me too much to be in the car an hour and a half a day.
Yeah.
That's a stupid use of your money.
Yes.
And when I'm in the car like during prime news breaking hours. Right. It's like noon on the East Coast, 4 or 5 on the West Coast.
Yes.
That I am useless to you instead of live on the radio. Like that's just not a good dollar for dollar, like they say in public radio challenge. And I sort of feel that way about these opportunities now too. And I've gotten increasingly stingy about them. It's like, what is going to be the long-term payoff here? Now, relationship building, often worth it. But if you already have a relationship, what are you going to lose by not going? Like I think that's like, writ large, that's like the question that we're all asking ourselves now. Will I be more productive in the office? Will some employees be more productive in the office, but others won't be?
Yes.
Is the amount that you pay me worth you having me in a car for an hour a day, right? Like, or 2 hours a day?
Well, and who pays for that? Like,
and
literally,
who
I
pays
saw
for that?
somebody on Twitter saying, I think it was actually an Apple employee. It was around.
Yeah,
the
they were
Apple
like,
thing.
you should pay our commute costs.
And I was like, whoa, that's not how this works. But okay, you know, like, I understand the argument, but when has anybody ever said, like, pay for my commute? That was always the employee's responsibility. But I guess after 2 years of working at home, now
happens. Come on, that's actually been around for years.
Nobody gets
commuter
paid for their
benefits. Nobody
commuter
gets paid.
benefits are paying for your BART or your New York Metro card.
You get like some pre-tax benefits that, if you know, help.
That's meant to pay for the commute, not the hours. I mean, think about an expensive employee. What 2 hours a day equals 10 a week equals 520 a year. It'd be 25% of a pay bump. Everybody would be getting because it would be 20% more of your day. Think about it, 25% more every day, 8 hour day plus 25% more. So if it's $100,000 employee and you paid for their commute, it'd be $25,000 to pay for them reading books or listening to podcasts. It's like, But anyway,
if you as the company, if that employee worked from home for this whole time and got everything done, no outcome changed, and in fact was potentially even 20 or 30% more productive because they weren't going somewhere and they weren't tired at the end of the night. They could just sort of pick up the laptop at 9 because they're not pooped. They didn't go somewhere all day. If there was no difference in productivity, and then you, company, were like, no, I want you to come here now and lose those 2 hours. If I'm that employee, I would also want to get paid.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, really? Because like previously I was working during those hours.
Yeah.
For free, right? For my salary. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think there's it's a real management question for our time.
A real management question. So I would like to give advice. I've been thinking about this a lot. And I've been thinking about it in relation to the very scary recession we're going into. Having lived through 2 recessions, and in both recessions having had to lay people off, I'm determined to not have to do that this time. So for inside employees and launch employees listening, as the boss, I am monitoring things. I keep cash in the bank. I keep myself cashed up. I'm very conservative in my lifestyle. You don't see me flying private, even though I arguably could. I don't do certain things because I try to keep cash reserves high so that I don't ever have to deal with laying people off. But we're all thinking it, right? Yeah. Oh my God, what happens if advertising takes a hit? What if the economy is thrown in for 2 years? Will you have to lay people off? Will our company be one of those companies? So I always think about, well, how do you avoid that? Well, one, you keep revenue high and you have to have efficiency high. So now if we start thinking of ourselves as a team, which in my later life, I've really started to look at teams and team functionality. It's hanging out with, Draymond a bunch and watching the Warriors up close and watching that team. I've actually learned a lot from Draymond, talking to him about team dynamics, Kevin Durant, Steph.
It's funny because
of
all people, right?
I've learned more from him about team dynamics than any business person. I'll tell you that.
That's the thing people don't understand about him. But yes,
he is that guy. He's that glue guy, right? Yeah. So I, literally was, talking to him about this the last couple of weeks. So I said, okay, everybody's fear, right? And fear is a big driver of people's behavior. Everybody's fear is, oh my God, pay cuts, layoffs. Am I secure? Is the economy going to be okay? Inflation's going up and layoffs are happening at the same time. How do I play a role in that? Like what's going to happen? Okay. Efficiency is what's important.
Yep.
And so if you can't hire more people, well, then if we're each 10% more productive in a 20-person company, it's the equivalent of hiring 2 more people. Does anybody think, listening to my voice right now, that there is a way for them to be 10% more productive in their lives? What do you think, Molly? If you ask 20 people, could you be 10% more productive? How many people would say, sure, I think I could be 10% more productive. I'm not sure exactly how, but could I be?
Like 90%.
90%
people would say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody, it's like the human brain, right? That what do they say? You only use 20%.
Exactly. So there is no world in which everybody could not be 10% more productive. And in fact, I think everybody could probably be 10% more productive a month. I think they could be 10% more productive a month for multiple months in a row. So how do you become more productive? Training, professional training, technical training, those 2 things alone, just basic training. If you invest in training, everybody's going to get 10, 20, 30% more effective. What have you seen me do over the last 30, 60 days?
Yep. Training.
Training.
Totally.
I'm training everybody. Then what's
and
another
it might
way?
reduce productivity in the short term, right? Because you spend a lot of time upfront on training.
Yeah.
It's an investment.
Right.
And it matters.
Okay. So you do a little training. Then I did my research. It turns out there's a group of people who do something called time blocking. And this is where I'm circling back to work from home and that whole standoff.
Yeah.
But then there is time blocking on calendars. And then there's reporting on what you're doing and having intentionality about your day. So there turns out there's something called time blocking. This is where you put like something that falls through the cracks, maybe in your day-to-day. And so one of the things that's always fallen through the cracks here at This Week in Startups is checking the Slack and checking the community groups that we have tried to do. So I said to the team, hey, this has fallen through the cracks. I just want everybody to put 15 minutes, I think I said, on their calendar every day for 1 week and just go to the Twitter group that we started and just interact there. I saw delightfully yesterday that Nick is out, but Rachel and Justin and myself went in there. You can jump in there too, Molly. If you have time to time block, even if it's 5 minutes, to just say hi to the fans. And it's amazing. We all did it. And everybody's interacting all of a sudden. There's more questions coming in. So the power of time blocking is really interesting. But then I realized there's another time blocking thing. And me as a boss, I asked everybody on my teams to share their calendar with me. I started going through them. I noticed a trend. Some of the most productive people have calendars that have time blocking on them. And I was like, oh my Lord, what a really interesting thing. And then I saw some people maybe who are younger in their careers, they don't even know what time blocking is. Yeah. So but another example, I said to Rachel.
Well, let's explain too. We mean not just, so I use time blocking for focus time. I also use it for things that are in my life that have to occur so that everybody knows, like, this is pickup, this is drop off, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But parenting. You can be parent. Well, yeah, but also like parenting during work hours, right? Like, hey, this is gonna,
this is happening. Yeah.
Some people literally I encourage them, like, you need to put exercise on your calendar.
Yeah. I just started that.
Like, it's actually really important. And it's
how do you think I skied 40 days last year? I skied 40 days because I put on my calendar,
you block it off.
Every day, 12 to 3, don't put meetings here. I'm going to try to get on the mountain in that window.
Right.
And do 2 hours is what I was doing. And then I'll do meetings until 7:30. So I open my meeting window after that.
Right. Totally. And the thing is that it's sort of like, this is where I'm like obsessed with make a list of everything that you do every day, because then you start to realize the things you do every day that you didn't think were work that could be on your calendar as work.
Yes.
Like, if you're a person who, like, most of what I do here is talk here and then have meetings. And I found myself in the trap of like almost every salesperson or EVP that I know who like has meetings all day and then is like, I have a lot of work to do at night, because they're like, I didn't do any work today. I just talked all day long. And so then it turns out that there's work you have to do. Like, after we have an investment meeting with somebody or a founder meeting, you got to like organize your notes, not just take them, but put them all in the right place. Like, how,
and share them with people and come to a determination. Do you want to move this company on to the next step? That takes a decision-making time. Right.
Yep.
So it's post-meeting time.
There's post-meeting time. Then there's decision time. Then there's time to answer emails. All of that can be a calendar entry.
Yes. And so you don't want to put silly stuff on there, but having some intentionality. What this makes you think about as an individual, I found, was what actually am I here for? What's the priority in my job? Right. Clearly the priority in your job and my job, to be on air and to do this podcast 6 days a week. Then there's another piece, meeting with the companies, but there is another piece, which is also, hey, we have to make a decision about these companies. So if I'm taking a 20-minute introductory meeting, which we all know goes to 30 or 40, there needs to be another 10, 20 minutes for me to organize my notes. Yep. So it's really, even with a 20-minute introductory call, it's probably an hour of total work.
Yep.
Yeah. And it goes to a half hour, and there might be another half hour or maybe 15 minutes of writing it all down. And there might be 15 minutes of prep for the next call. So you put all this together. The thing I realized was, as a manager of a business, my anxiety went way down, because I realized, wait, there's some more resources to capture here. And maybe I haven't done the best job telling people what the priority is. So if people do time blocking, not in an egregious, like, I'm doing email for this hour, I'm doing email for this hour, I'm doing email for this hour. It's like, okay, email and Slack. Like, there are some jobs where you got to get through a lot of emails. Actually, mine is one of them, because I put
many hours. I put literally Friday afternoons of email.
Oh, really? Yeah.
The whole, like, I try to have no meetings on a Friday afternoon because otherwise you're literally drowning. You've been introduced to 7 great companies by other VCs and you have no clue because it's on page 3 of the inbox, you know?
Yeah. So getting through, that was exactly where I was going, cut me off the pass, which is my email box has the next 50 companies we need to meet with. So I do need to get in there for half an hour every day and just sort them. I mean, it's literally just sorting them. Do I know the person who introduced me? Do I need to respond? All that stuff.
Yeah.
So putting this all together, I just had this great realization that there is a way for this to work for both parties. Managers always have this fear that people are not doing their job. And that fear comes not from the 80% of people who are doing a great job in your company in all likelihood. It comes from the 10% who are bad actors, who are fucking off and not doing their job. Please bleep out the F word. My mom listens. And then the other 10% are people who are just inefficient. And maybe in your company, it's 60, 20, 20. Who knows what the percentage is? But that's the fear you as a team member should know about what bosses are thinking of. That's why they make a snap decision like everybody come to the office. That's why, or 3 days a week, because they want to know at least they have some engagement going on. And there are other reasons to be in the office, like physically making products that are physical in the real world and collaboration and relationship building. Put it aside for a second. Let's just talk about getting rid of that fear that managers have. There's a very super easy task for this, which is if you're intentional about your calendar, you share your calendar with your boss and you say, hey, look, here's what I'm working on. Does this sync with you? Because I looked at our team here and I realized like the booking of guests or researching of guests, it always seems to fall way behind on the priority. So I said, Rachel, I don't want you on air for the show when we're taping. We'll have we only need one producer to be on air while we're taping.
Right.
You, the second the show notes are done at 10 a.m., get off the show. For this week, 3 hours of researching guests. I just want you to find us guests, rank them, and get to 10 a day. In 1 week, you'll have 50. And then I want you to tell us the 5 to 10 best. And I was actually going to ask you, Molly, to time bank maybe on a Friday, a little mentoring there of half an hour. Maybe you look at her results and say, hey, here's what I think of these guests. And maybe you pick your favorites and I'll put a half hour. Here's what I think. Or maybe we'll just do it all together.
Oh, we have that. She and I have that half hour schedule. We have that tomorrow. We have that. It's on my calendar. It's on our calendar for tomorrow. We're doing it after the show.
So this is also for managers. You have to look at your business and say, hey, what's not hitting the notes that you think you need to hit to succeed? Great guess, obviously a big part of this. So I said, okay, this week you do that. Next week, Justin will switch into that position and then Nick will, and write us a night tight best practices page and we'll iterate on that. And then that'll be training because each person has a different way of finding great guests. So anyway, this is a long way of saying I'm examining everybody's productivity. And through this different techniques like time banking and, time blocking. And did I do a good job as a manager giving the instructions as to what's important so that we don't have to hire a ton of people. So we don't have to increase expenses into what could be a possible recession where revenue could be going down. And so as a leader and as an employee, if you do think we're in a recession, this is a great way to avoid layoffs or to make the company stronger. And if management and employees start looking at it as a team, we want to win. And the analogy here is if you look at the Warriors, they don't think about who scores the most points. They think about, how crisp of a pass can they make? How can they break down defenses? What's the most optimal shot they can take? Not what's optimal for me, what's the most optimal shot? And so that's what I'm trying to think about as a leader for me is, am I creating in our organization the optimization that we need? And that whole discussion we had about the QS, I won't tell people what that is because I consider it a competitive advantage, but the QS project we've been working on for the last 30 days, did you see the massive uplift in productivity? It's like, whoa, this thing's going to be like a machine. That directly came from watching the Warriors and how they pass the ball. I was just thinking the ball needs to move.
Yep.
It's about the speed of the ball. It's not about the individual contributor's ability to shoot or not. Like, sure, you want Steph to shoot, but Clay can shoot, Draymond can shoot, Wiggins can shoot. They got a lot of Jordan. There's a lot of people who can shoot on that team. Just move the ball around. That's what's important is the speed for that. But for us, it's the TTM, which I won't tell what that is, but that speed is what's the equivalent of the ball movement.
Yep.
So here ends the lesson. We're all in it together. If you're a founder of a company, this is This Week in Startups. If you're a founder of a company, start reviewing the calendars with your team, and you have to just give them the disclaimer up front. I'm not doing this to micromanage you. I'm doing this so you're 10%, 20% more productive. So we get the equivalent of, 10%, 20% more employees. And where this hits the rubber meets the road is if an employer can feel that you're working but 8 hours a day, what you're getting paid consistently and efficiently, then the whole discussion about working from home becomes like almost an afterthought.
Right.
I know you're productive.
Right.
And
that's
we're
the
working
idea.
on your productivity together. We're collaborators on your productivity. That I think, I don't know, you tell me what you think of my, performance on this objectively, and the just concept writ large in relation to go back to work in an office because we don't know if you're working or not.
Right, exactly. Like, I think that I appreciate a lot the recognition that going to the office becomes a shorthand for productivity, and that's not always the case. That every organization, no matter what, has hitters and sitters. And
hitters, I like it.
I think I just made that up, actually. I've never heard that before. Hitters and sitters.
Yeah.
And it's sort of figuring, and frankly, there are some roles where you need hitters, and there are some roles where it's okay to have a bit of a sitter, but when you're in a downturn, you need them to stand up. And so the question is how you get them to do that. And I think that there's no question that trying to understand where the misses are. Yeah. And, my only note to you would be to say all of the things you just said up front before you're like, give me your calendars.
Oh, okay. I'll do a better job of that. Yeah.
So in our meeting in like an hour,
yeah,
that would be a great thing to set up the way you just said it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing about that doesn't make sense. And there's nothing about that doesn't include the fact that like what we're really trying to do is say, what are we wasting time on?
That's really the point.
And what could we be optimizing for? Because there's probably something in every organization. I encounter this all the time. There's something your boss told you to do 3 years ago.
Yeah. Still doing.
And you're still doing it like a nice squirrel on a hamster on a wheel.
2 hours a week. Yeah.
You're spending 2 hours a week doing that.
3
but
years,
the priorities
300 hours
have
wasted.
changed.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Your boss's priority has changed. The goals have changed. The market has evolved. You're still spending 300 hours a year on that thing. Yeah. So once in a while, we got to go look at the wheel.
Yeah.
And figure out which routes we're running that we don't need to be running. And that's like exactly what we're trying to do now. And it's great. And there should be a goal in mind. There are OKRs in mind at the end of the.
If I think if every company did this, professional training, I think you get 10% better a month for 3 or 4 months, sustained, no problem. Definitely. 5 to 10% better. Then you look at time blocking and just time management and efficiency there. Maybe depending on the person, it's 1 to 10%. Anyway, you put these two things together. If the two numbers can equal between training and time management, 10, and then there's a third, which is clarity of the goals.
Yes.
So those three pieces: clarity of goals, your own personal time management, and training. Let's say they get you 5% better each month. It's 15% better. 15% better compounded because of the rule of 72. You divide that 15 into 72. You're going to get like 4 point something, right? 5, basically. It means in 5 months, you'll be twice as good. You'll be twice as efficient. Now that seems crazy. It's actually true. It's actually true. If you actually compound being better at your job with training, you could be twice as good in 6 months. Of course. Like think of a chef. Some chef is making food. They could make it twice as good, twice as fast if they got 15% better every month. It's just obvious. So compounding growth is the lesson. And, this all came up because there was, I guess, some leaked emails from Elon to his management team that he's building real products in the world. Anyone who wishes to do remote work must be in the office for a minimum, and I mean a minimum of 40 hours per week, or depart Tesla. This is less than we ask of factory workers. The factory workers obviously are putting in probably 50 hours a week. And then a follow-up email. The key graph was, there are, of course, Elon, I guess, did a follow-up email to be super clear, because he's being clear as a manager as well. There are, of course, companies that don't require this, but when was the last time they shipped a great new product? I think he's talking about Apple or Google maybe. But no, they're both coming back to work.
I mean,
they haven't come back to work. It's been a while. It's been a while. I think he's probably talking to Apple about Apple there. Tesla has and will create, actually.
Apple, come on, it's been decades. Like they're just iterating. They've been iterating.
I give them credit for AirPods on the watch.
Yeah, AirPods on the watch are great. They're accessories to the iPhone.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're
right.
I
mean, my belief on this, right? Like Apple revolves around the sun, and the sun is the iPhone.
I do think,
and they make great accessories to the iPhone, but I don't know that.
The watch, I think by version 6 or 7, which is when I I finally got rid of my Fitbit. Like Apple was being beaten by Fitbit, which was like a deprecating product that nobody was paying attention to for many years. Like you didn't see many changes in it. It was still a better product than Apple Watches. The Apple Watch, I think, is on par with the Fitbit now. But what Elon says here is there are, of course, companies, blah, blah, blah. Tesla has and will create and actually manufacture the most exciting and meaningful products of any company on earth. This will not be happening by phoning it in. So I think there's something different going on here. He is actually building the stuff too. They're not outsourcing the building of this to some factory, which Apple does, right? Apple has contract manufacturers who make their stuff. Yeah. So I understand Elon's point
whatever
of view
your
here,
company was, if you are like, we can only accomplish this way, then make that clear to your employees, and that's the deal.
Yeah.
But I think managers are going to have a tendency, people are going to have a tendency reading this email to be like, oh, I too can only accomplish my thing this way. And that may not be true for your company because you don't make cars or spaceships.
Exactly.
Right. So figure out what your product is and how your team can get it done and evaluate it. And you might find that 80% of your people need to be in the office. I don't know. Right. I think that's still really an open question. Like,
yeah, it's gonna be, and then there's this other thing. There's competition for employees, and so I've seen in companies that are remote at the early stages, their costs go down, and the time to fill positions go down.
Yep.
And their product shipping goes up in a software company, specifically. So now, will it make the most refined, great products? That's going to be another question. So it certainly is really hard to relocate people. You hire an iOS developer and they start, in 2 weeks, they resign, they start in 2 weeks, and they're working from anywhere, and they work for a third less than the one in Silicon Valley needs to. And the one in Silicon Valley is commuting 2 hours a day, and they are less productive and hate their life. Like, you can see how this works out, right? So I think that's the way we'll hash out. What I think is it's going to be different strokes for different founders. And right now, I gave it a lot of thought over the last couple of months as things reopened. Do I want to move back to an in-person thing? And I was like, for me, I think I want to try for the next year, 4 times a year, getting together and doing like serious team building, professional development for 4 days or 5 days. And so I guess the working for me is going to be, you have 4 weeks away from your family a year, which is not insignificant, right? It's going to be a significant amount of time away from, it's insignificant compared to going to an office,
right?
But it's insignificant for never going anywhere. So I think that's going to just be the balance I'm going to try to do, which is, it's 20 days away from your family a year out of 365. It's a lot less than, going to an office every day. So
I think so.
A lot of rambling thoughts.
So many thoughts. Such a long show for you today. And next up is our great interview, which also went longer than we expected, with DroneUp founder and CEO Tom Walker. So don't be tired, because this is totally worth it.
You got a lot of show. Just, do what I did. I went on the treadmill this morning. You got an Obi-Wan episode out. Tomorrow, Lon Harris is on the show. We'll go through the 3 Obi-Wan episodes. And I think we have 2 Star Trek.
2 Star Trek. Also, I started watching Winning Time. About
I want to start watching that. I heard it's great. Is it great?
You got to watch that. It's great. I'm 1 episode in. It's fantastic.
Maybe we'll add that.
I have to add that to the docket.
Yeah. So tomorrow we'll whip through the first 3 episodes of Obi-Wan and the first 2 episodes of the new Star Trek. Or is it 3 episodes of Star Trek? I'm not sure.
Oh God, I don't know. I better go look.
Yeah, we better check. Some producer.
I better put Star Trek on my calendar today.
Yeah. Oh, time block it. Yeah. No, that's not your time, Molly. Not my time. That better not be during the day. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, everybody. Enjoy this interview.
Enjoy.
Yeah. All right, good.
Great. We got an intro at the top.
Oh, intro. Right. Oh, forgot about that. We got an intro. All right. In 3, 2, hey, everybody. Big show today. 90 minutes of show. It's a lot of show.
Yeah,
but we got a lot accomplished. What do we got on deck?
Show today? Let's see. We are going to talk a little bit about what is happening in finance and ESG. We're talking about Deutsche Bank getting raided by German law enforcement for greenwashing its ESG funds, that is a very timely topic right now. Let's just say.
And that, sorry, got distracted. 3, 2, and then we touch base on Fidelity marking down their investments in Stripe and Reddit.
We're going to talk about companies going back into the office over concerns about worker productivity, and then leads to a nice big conversation about productivity.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on professional training, time blocking and time management by employees, and obviously work from home and remote, and then setting clear goals in your company. And I think I have a formula for success as we come out of the pandemic and move to endemic, and people are now deciding, do we come back to work or not? I have a way for managers, I think, and employees to navigate work from home. And it's really based upon productivity. And it's also a way for companies that are scared about this recession being an extended one, maybe getting 20, 30, 40% out of their current employee base and team rather than hiring 30, 40%, or maybe being 30, 40% more effective, leading to more revenue, and then reducing the number of layoffs you have to do. So if you're scared about those things, like I have a concern about, I don't know if I'm scared, but I am concerned and attuned to it. I've really been thinking about it, and I have a really good strategy I want to share today in terms of operating your company.
Yeah, it's a great show. That alone, by the way, is like a lot of show.
Well,
but
show.
then
Then
we have a great interview with the CEO of DroneUp, the company that's working with Walmart.
Yeah, we talked about them the other day. Yeah,
drone deliveries. Exactly. We had a million logistical questions. So we got Tom Walker on the show, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show.
Stick with us.
All right, there we go.
Settle in. Get on the treadmill.
Yeah,
I know. I was so. I want to talk to David Rosenthal again in like a year. Remember, he was just like, "Yeah, I think it's fine. Recessions happen." I was like, "Oh, Peanut, you're just a baby. You're just a baby."
You know, it's some of them go quicker than others. You know, the .com one, it was like a malaise for 2 or 3 years, and
that was just brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal, and things didn't go up, but you went sideways if you were, in the top half of the employee pool, in terms of your effectiveness. You were not affected.
Decade. I think of it as like a lost decade in a way of just sort of like plateau.
It was sideways. Yeah. And I think a lot of great companies were started during that period, and a lot of great skills were learned. So there were things you could do, but I think the bottom half of the employee base got walloped. So the bottom half of, let's just not even call them employees.
We don't even mean the sitters too. We mean the lower, like if you were new, if you were just entering the workforce when that was happening.
Just generally how good you were.
Yeah.
At your job.
Oh, okay. So you mean sitters? Yeah.
No, I'm talking about sitters, but it could also be people who are just new in their careers. They couldn't get a job.
Right.
So there was no job for them to be mentored, to be professionally developed. So if you just took the half and a half, I think people in the top half, they had jobs, they could start companies. Yeah, they may not get paid as much. They may not have their salaries increase as much. They may have to work harder, but it was like a really good grinded out exercise. I built Weblogs Inc. during that time. I was a highly productive person and had some big wins, and so did some other people. But I think the bottom half, weren't even able to get in the game because there weren't jobs. They didn't have skills. They kind of, those people I think had a lost decade of, like, hey, can I get a job somewhere? Like, it was really strange when
if you were like kind of stuck and there wasn't anywhere obvious, you couldn't go. Right. It was like
keep your job.
Had to be sort of stuck. You had to keep your job.
Yeah. You don't want to lose your job because you might not find a new one. And that was like a big challenge for a lot of people, I think. So I think if you're thinking this is going to be quick, you better be in the top half of performers because some number of people get left behind in these kind of recessions. And so that's another observation I would say is like, you can mitigate it with just hard work and skills. But that's up to you, that hard work and skills is not going to be like some companies will be like, I'm taking a chance on you. Oh, you're a producer who's never had a job as a producer. Like, we're just going to take a chance on you. Like, those jobs are going to be gone because as the number of jobs reduce, the employers are going to pick people with more talent, more experience, and they're going to pay less for them. So you don't have this like people taking risk on unproven talent. That's, I think, going to be a big trend.
It's a flight to safety in both directions.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect way to say it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, team.
See you later. Bye.